Not every door needs to be closed by your own hands. Not every wound requires an answer to heal. Sometimes, peace is not found in knowing why, but in knowing yourself. We spend so much of our energy chasing something that keeps moving, closure. We want explanations, we want apologies, we want validation. But have you ever asked, what if closure is not given, but created? What if it's not about ending the chapter, but understanding why you kept reading it in the first place? We often speak of closure as if it is a sacred ritual, something that must be earned or granted before we can move on with our lives. When someone walks away without a goodbye, when a relationship ends without explanation, or when life deals us a heavy blow without reason, our first instinct is to demand a conclusion. We want understanding, we want answers, but beneath this yearning lies something deeper, a desire to control that which is uncontrolled. We believe that if we can make sense of it all, the pain will dissolve. That if we hear the words we've been waiting for, "I'm sorry, it wasn't your fault, you deserved better," we will finally be at peace. But the truth is, closure is not a door someone else has to shut. It is a door within you that you have the power to walk through. And more often than not, that door doesn't close with answers. It closes with acceptance. The teachings of Shaolin remind us that suffering is prolonged not by what happens to us, but by our attachment to how we believe it should have happened. We replay events over and over, not because we enjoy the pain, but because we secretly hope we can rewrite the ending. We seek closure because we think it will return control to our story. But this is a trick of the ego. Control is not peace. It is resistance dressed as righteousness. The one who must always know why is not yet free. Because freedom does not come from understanding the past. It comes from releasing it. Clarity, on the other hand, is a different kind of liberation. It does not demand anything from others. It does not argue with reality. Clarity is the quiet recognition of what is, without needing to fix, explain, or retell it. When you shift from seeking closure to seeking clarity, you step out of the storm and into the eye of it. You realize that closure is noisy. It comes with conversations, confrontations, emotional expectations. Clarity, however, is silent. It asks no one for permission. It is a moment when the mind becomes still enough to see things as they are, not as your pain would like them to be. You see that someone's departure wasn't necessarily a betrayal. It was a reflection of their journey, not your worth. You understand that the ending didn't mean you failed. It meant the past had served its purpose. You stop needing their apology because you've already forgiven. You stop needing them to explain because you've already understood. This is the power of clarity. It belongs to you, and only you can give it to yourself. Control binds you to others. Clarity returns you to yourself. The more you chase closure, the more you remain entangled in what was. But the moment you choose clarity, you start living from what is. You begin to ask different questions. Not, why did they do this to me? But, what do I been avoiding? You no longer wait for life to make sense. You simply watch, breathe, and listen. And in that quiet, a different kind of knowing emerges. One that brings peace without explanation and strength without closure. Let go of needing the ending to be clean. Let go of needing the story to be fair. Instead, bring your awareness to what this experience has revealed within you. Have you discovered patience, humility, or resilience you didn't know you possessed? Have you seen the depth of your own compassion? Have you witnessed the mind's tendency to dwell, and the soul's deeper desire to evolve. These are not the fruits of closure. These are the gifts of clarity, and they are found not by reaching outward, but by sitting still, listening inward, accepting the impermanence of life with grace, not resistance. This is the Shaolin way. The most persistent question the mind clings to after pain is why. It echoes like a drumbeat in the silence left behind. Why did they leave me? Why did this happen to me? Why now and not later? But the wisdom of Shaolin teaches that this kind of questioning is a sword that cuts both ways. It gives us the illusion of pursuit, of movement, but in reality, it leaves us circling the same emotional terrain over and over. The question, why, is rooted in the past. It ties you to a moment that no longer exists. It seeks justice from time. But time, like the wind, does not turn back to explain. It only moves forward. So must we. When you continually ask why, what you are really saying is, I do not accept this. You are fighting with reality, and in doing so, you multiply your pain. In Zen philosophy, suffering is not just the event. It is the resistance to what is. The mind wants answers because it believes that if it can understand, it can heal. But clarity does not come through mental overthinking. It comes through presence, through surrender, through the willingness to ask a more powerful question, what now? This question does not seek to unravel the past, it seeks to guide the present. What now is a doorway to transformation. It invites you to grow instead of grieve endlessly. It teaches you to move with life instead of dragging the weight of unchangeable moments behind. The Shaolin path emphasizes adaptability. In martial arts, we are taught to respond, not to react. We are trained not just in combat, but in presence. When something knocks you off balance, the first principle is not to ask why you were struck, but to regain your stance. The same applies to emotional life. Instead of reliving what happened, redirect your energy into what you will do with the experience. Let pain become your instructor. Let loss sharpen your awareness. Ask yourself, what now needs to be seen within me that wasn't seen before? What now can I release that I was holding on to so tightly? What now will I become because of this moment? The question, what now, empowers you. It puts your hands back on the reins of your inner life. It shifts your focus from the uncontrollable past to the present, where all healing truly begins. Why want someone else to answer? What now invites you to act. And in that action, there is a subtle but profound alchemy. Your suffering is no longer something to escape. It becomes something you grow through. You stop seeing yourself as the victim of a story and begin to realize you are the author of the next chapter. This is not just philosophy. It is freedom in action. Because once you stop demanding reasons, you make room for direction. It is natural to want understanding. It is human to desire meaning. But not all truths are spoken, and not all wisdom arrives in words. Some clarity only emerges in movement, in taking the next step with quiet courage, even when the path ahead is uncertain. In learning to say, I may never know why this happened, but I will choose who I become because of it. The river does not argue with the rock in its path. It flows around it, reshaping the earth with time and patience. So too can we learn to flow forward, letting experience carve depth into our being without anchoring us in sorrow. Let what now be your compass. Let it turn your gaze from the locked door of the past to the open path ahead. It may be a quieter question, a softer question, but within it lies tremendous power. The power to shift from story to presence, from pain to purpose. And as you begin to walk forward, not needing the past to answer, you will feel something change. The weight lifts, the fog clears, and slowly, clarity begins to rise, like the morning mist from a still mountain lake. When the mind is hurt, it wants movement. When the heart is confused, it craves action. We feel an urgency to speak, to explain, to text, to resolve, to fix what feels broken. But in Shaolin wisdom, we are taught that this impulse is not always rooted in wisdom. It is often rooted in steel, fear of emptiness, fear of being alone with what we feel. And so we move, not forward, but in circles. We stir the surface of the water, trying to make it still, but you cannot calm the lake by thrashing in it. You must step away and allow it to settle. The answers we are looking for so desperately will not come from our noise. They will only arise in the presence of stillness. Stillness is not the absence of motion, it is the presence of awareness. It is not passive, it is powerful. In the Shaolin tradition, stillness is not just a state of being, it is a discipline. When you sit in silence with no one else to validate your experience, no words to comfort you, and no distractions to escape into, you meet the raw edge of your own truth. You meet the sadness, the anger, the confusion, not to judge it, but to witness it. And in that witnessing, you begin to remember emotions are weather, not identity. They pass. And beneath them, there is a deeper sky. A sky that does not move with the storm. The modern world teaches us to respond quickly, to resolve quickly. But true clarity does not come in haste. It comes slowly, like water dripping through stone. You may sit for hours, for days, feeling nothing but the heaviness in your chest. That is okay. Stillness is not about feeling better. It is about becoming honest. Honest with what you carry. Honest with what you've avoided. In this sacred space of silence, the mind slows down, the body exhales. And the truth that was buried under all your questions rises like incense in a quiet temple. This is the moment you begin to see not just what happened, but what it meant. Not just who hurt you, but why it still holds power. Not just the situation, but your attachment to it. In martial arts, we train not just to strike, but to wait, to pause, to be still before responding. This is not hesitation, this is intelligence. Likewise, in emotional life, stillness gives you the space to choose a response instead of being swept away by reaction. The person who rushes to speak, to act, to confront often ends up saying things that create more damage, with purpose, with compassion. This is inner mastery. It is not the ability to change what happened, but the ability to remain unmoved by it long enough to understand it. In stillness, your vision changes. You begin to see that what you thought was rejection was redirection, that what you called loss was a sacred clearing, that the silence you feared from others was actually an invitation to hear your own voice again. Stillness reveals what movement conceals. It shows you the pattern beneath the pain. It strips away the narrative and leaves only the lesson. But only if you can resist the urge to interrupt your own healing by seeking outside resolution. The tree does not grow by pulling at its branches. It grows by staying rooted in place. So must you. This is the paradox of stillness. By doing nothing, everything begins to transform. The emotions you were afraid would drown you begin to dissolve. The stories you couldn't stop replaying begin to quiet. The closure you thought had to come from someone else begins to feel unnecessary. Why? Because in the space of stillness, you've remembered who you are beyond the experience, beyond the heartbreak, beyond the confusion. You've returned to your center, to the place where peace is not something you seek, but something you are. From this silence, a deeper awareness starts to form. Not forced, not figured out, but felt gently, clearly. And it is from this state that the next truth begins to rise like a ripple across the surface of the now still water. There is a quiet prison many people live inside, and it is built with the hope that someone else's words will set them free. We wait, not for time to heal us, but for another person to say the perfect thing. I'm sorry, I was wrong, you deserve better. We believe that if we hear those words, our pain will dissolve and our heart will finally be able to rest. But this is an illusion. If your peace depends on someone else's voice, then your peace does not belong to you. It is rented, fragile, and easily taken away. And the one who holds your peace controls you. This is not mastery, this is dependence. And in the way of inner cultivation, dependence is always the first chain we must break. It is natural to want to be understood. It is human to long for reconciliation, for mutual understanding, for truth to be spoken out loud. But the wisdom of self-mastery reminds us that healing does not need agreement. Closure does not require validation. The journey of the martial artist and the spiritual practitioner is not one of being owed peace, but one of creating peace in the face of silence. When a monk is insulted and says nothing in return, people often ask, "Why did you not speak?" And the monk replies, "Because peace is not something I argue for, it is something I carry." Likewise, your ability to stay composed when the world gives you no answers is a sign not of weakness, but of profound strength. Many people continue suffering not because of what happened, but because of what was never said. They replay the absence, the unspoken, the apology that never came. But in the Shaolin way, we are taught to stop feeding the fire of absence. Instead of asking why they didn't explain, ask yourself why you believe their explanation would change anything. And you will begin to see much of what we seek from others is a reflection of what we have not yet given ourselves. Forgiveness, permission to move on, acknowledgement of our worth. These are not gifts we wait to receive. They are disciplines we practice internally. A person who requires another to explain their behavior in order to feel settled will forever be a servant to external forces. But the one who chooses to sit with discomfort, understand their emotions, and offer themselves the compassion they never received, that person becomes immovable. Not cold, not bitter, but free. There is power in silence when it comes from self-respect. There is liberation in letting go of the need to be told something you already know deep within. You are whole. You are not defined by what was withheld from you. And that truth cannot be spoken by another. It must be realized through stillness, through awareness, through presence. The greatest peace comes not when someone finally tells you what you've been waiting to hear, but when you realize you no longer need to hear it. That moment, that turning inward, is the moment you begin to reclaim your power. Not the kind of power that dominates others or demands attention, but the silent, humble power of one who is no longer shaken by the winds of the world. This is the essence of the Shaolin path. The cultivation of an inner space so calm, so grounded that no external voice can disturb it. A sanctuary built not on conditions but on clarity. Not on revenge or righteousness, but on letting go. Not for them, but for your own liberation. You may still wish for the words, you may still imagine what it would feel like to hear them. That is okay. But do not let your healing hinge upon them. Let your peace be like a temple, sacred, solid, and unmoved by the chaos outside its walls. When you stop waiting for someone else to give you peace, you start discovering the depth of your own. You begin to experience a calm that arises not from resolution, but from self-realization. And from that place, a new chapter begins. Not because someone else turned the page, but because you did. And in that quiet turning, something within you rises gently and prepares for what comes next. There is a moment on the journey of every practitioner where they come to a quiet realization that not every wound needs to be stitched shut by the one who caused it. Some doors will remain open in the mind, some sentences unfinished, some emotions unresolved, and yet life still flows. It flows not because everything is complete, but because you have chosen to walk forward anyway. This is the essence of clarity, the willingness to carry wisdom, not wait. Closure demands that all things be settled. Clarity asks only that you be settled. And when you choose clarity over closure, you do not erase the past. You simply stop letting it hold the pen. There is a subtle heaviness in the pursuit of closure. It ties your progress to a condition. I will move on when I understand. I will heal if they explain. Will let go once I hear the truth. But such thinking traps you in a waiting room of your own mind. And some people wait there for years, for the call that never comes, for the apology that never arrives, for the closure that keeps changing shape. In Shaolin practice, we are reminded that heaviness is not always a sign of depth. Sometimes it is simply stagnation, and the one who continues to carry what no longer belongs to them forgets that their strength is not in holding on. It is in releasing. Clarity is different. It is not grand or dramatic. It comes softly, like the hush of dawn over a still forest. It does not announce itself with answers. It emerges as a shift in being. You wake one morning and the ache is quieter. The need to know is not so loud. You feel your breath move freely, not caught in the cage of old stories. This is not because someone gave you peace. It is because you stopped seeking it outside yourself. You chose consciously to walk lighter. Stop rehearsing the past like a performance you cannot escape. To stop needing every character in your story to return and play their part. You chose instead to honor your own role, the witness, the student, the soul that grows regardless. There is great dignity in quiet detachment, not the kind that suppresses or avoids, but the kind that says, I honor what happened, I have learned from it, and now I release the grip it had on my spirit. The teachings of the Shaolin Temple are not only about strength of body, but lightness of being. We train to move with power, yes, but also with grace. And grace in the emotional realm is found in letting go of explanations that will never come, and choosing instead to embody the wisdom that has already arrived. That is clarity. It is when your inner world no longer needs external confirmation to feel complete. When you walk with clarity, you walk differently. There is less tension in your jaw, less urgency in your pace, less resistance in your heart. You no longer need to justify your healing to anyone. You no longer need others to see what you've been through. You are not interested in proving the past was painful. You are interested in making the present peaceful. This shift is not loud. It does not need to be posted or praised, but it is powerful. Because every step you take from this space of inner stillness affirms a truth that closure never could, that you are enough, even with questions unanswered. And so you release not because they apologized, but because you are done carrying the question. You forgive not because they changed, but because you refuse to hold poison in your bloodstream. You understand not because they explained, but because your awareness has deepened beyond blame. This is the gift of choosing clarity. You walk lighter not because the road is easier, but because you are no longer dragging what no longer serves you. And in that space, something profound begins to rise. A quiet knowing, a gentle power, and a peace that does not depend on any thought or anyone. Sometimes the journey of healing is not a path we walk forward, but a space we choose to enter inward. A space where silence is not emptiness, but presence. Where questions are not problems to solve, but teachers to sit with. And where peace is no longer something we must earn from the world, but something we uncover within ourselves. In this moment, I invite you not to chase another ending, not to reach outward for closure, but to pause and choose clarity instead. Because clarity is not found in someone else's voice. It is revealed in your own stillness. You have listened deeply. You have been honest enough to feel. You have been courageous enough to ask the harder question, what now? That question alone is a sign that you are no longer trying to control the past, but are ready to create peace in the present. Remember, closure is loud, it demands, but clarity is quiet and powerful. When you no longer need a reason to let go, you are free. And that evolution is the path. The Shaolin way is not about perfect endings. It is about mastering the self in every unfolding moment. Nothing is certain, everything is possible. And when the mind is still, truth reveals itself. So start today, not by forcing an answer, not by chasing closure, but by becoming still and seeing what remains, what stays when you stop explaining. What quiet wisdom rises when you stop explaining. That is the beginning of clarity. Thank you for walking this path with me today. May your heart grow lighter, your mind become clearer, and your spirit remain rooted in peace. Until next time, breathe, observe, and move with grace. The journey continues.